Professor Pavlides will chair this session. He is my old friend. We first met each other in Izmir at the ESCA meeting almost 30 years ago, together with Ricardo Caputo. He is the first speaker of this session, so I am very glad to introduce him to you. He will be speaking on active tectonics of the broader Aegean region, an overview and new challenges. The floor is yours, Spyros.
Thanks, dear friend Oran. Can you give me the permission to share my screen with all of you?
Sure.
Because you are the host. And I would like to ask Ricardo Caputo. He sent a message that Gian-Maria Boccini is not here, isn't it, Ricardo?
No, he should be. He's connected as a spectator, and I asked to the technicians to switch him into the speakers. Spyros, you have the bar below with the green bottom. Okay, you got it.
Sorry. Sir. Can you see my?
Yes.
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 Okay, I return to the full screen now.
Okay, that's great. You can start now.
Great. So, this presentation will be highlight on what has been achieved on the Aegean active tectonics in a nutshell, in brief. We live in an earthquake region, and we have some models which are very simple. The area is geodynamically very complex, naturally it's complex, and our models simple. Some of the most important achievements of the explosive development of geosciences, in particular on the Aegean region, are the earthquake-related faults, faults relieved by their strange signature, the morphotectonics and landscape, the pre-instrumental seismicity and especially paleoseismology, satellite geodesy, the understanding of the seismogenic layer, the active fault maps and databases for seismic hazard assessment, and important, the earthquake science and engineering, which are joined. From the first world's mapped seismic fault in northern Peloponnese in 1861, we realized, we understood what is strike-slip faults, and especially the North Anatolian fault that 60 years ago, it wasn't known, there wasn't this knowledge that it was a strike-slip fault. Various proposed models, when converging or diverging views have been developed for the Aegean, many different faults with similarities and differences, while we know the active stress pattern, both from geological data from earlier of 80s and seismological focal mechanism and recently geological. And this is a very simple picture of the neotectonic, the older and the active stress field on the Aegean. The satellite geodesy and the blocks are very important, but you have the opportunity to see my colleague Alexandros Hatzipetrous to speak on this subject a little bit later. Now let's see some characteristics of active faults of the Aegean. First of all, I would like to pay your attention for the new definition of the active faults in Greece, which give emphasis on the from Aegean to late Pleistocene mainly, Wourmian and Holocene, and it is very detailed definition. It separates the seismic fault, that of observed surface seismic ruptures, the potentially active faults, and inactive faults or unknown activity faults. These faults should not be considered in the design of technical works except as discontinuity surfaces. The Aegean type fault, characterized by Hancock and Stewart, they have a repeated seismic activity which does not produce surface ruptures along the same fault strand. A fault activity deviating from the characteristic earthquakes, and we have earthquake clustering, as we know also from paleoseismological research, fault segmentation triggering, an important issue, and the displacement is a few tenths of centimeters. As we can see in these pictures, the normal is 10 to 20 centimeters vertical displacement, and rarely is 1 meter or more. The prehistory of faults from seismologists, in fact, they are seismogenic sources related to recent earthquakes, and many faults, many maps of active and possible active faults have been published by different authors for the Aegean. Here you can see the most spectacular active fault in central Greece, which has been characterized by Jackson and Mackenzie as the best exposed worldwide normal fault. In northern Greece, the main active faults of the northern Greece, and especially in the area of Thessaloniki, surrounded by many faults and earthquakes, as you can see in these pictures, and the fault ruptures, the coseismic ruptures, which been for the first time studied in detail after the 1978 earthquake by different groups of scientists. And in addition, in combination with paleoseismological results, which the first paleoseismological research from Greece started from this area after this Thessaloniki earthquake, we have this great parameter of slip rate, paleoseismological, historical, and instrumental earthquakes. The creep also have been studied in the area. We have seismic movements along the same faults after 10 and 25 years after this important earthquake. And as you can see in these trends, you can see the increase of displacement by 8 to 10 centimeters after 20 years of the earthquake. An important fault, the Crescent Fault, is associated with the so-called Crescent Earthquake, which was believed to be the strongest European earthquake in the 20th century. It's from the Bulgarian territory, very close to the Greek border. The active segmentation of 1904 earthquake, where our team has been used morphotectonic criteria like the triangular facets and to study that it was a displacement, a vertical displacement of 2 meters, and the strange thing is that the gas pipeline passes from this point. Morphotectonic criteria and methodologies have been applied in the nearest to Thessaloniki active faults, like that of the 1932 earthquake cycles, the Stratony Fault, a typical active fault. Here you can see some profiles, and especially the methodologies for segmentation of this fault. Mapping offshore fault is still problematic. We will see later by my colleague Sakellariou, except in the areas who have enough data, like in the North Aegean basins, the Norwegian Trough. Here is from Papanikolaou the publication, and additional data for deformation that appeared after strong earthquakes like this earthquake. Here you can see in example how we approach the North Aegean Trough active faults. They are the extension of the North Anatolian Fault, and you can see this Samos race, which is surrounded by active faults, and especially its southern part with the North Aegean fault trenches, a very characteristic uplifted hanging basin, the waterfalls on the fault surface. An important thing is also the urban geology, the urban active tectonics geology, like in Attica and its faults, and Thessaloniki, which also is surrounded by faults. Understanding active fault behavior, you can summarize a few words that repeated seismic activity does not produce surface ruptures along the same fault. Fault activity seems to deviate from the recurrence intervals predicted by the past earthquakes, but we don't know why. The paleoseismological research, which has been studied from our team at our university, it's still in academic level in Greece, and not like in Turkey and other countries by geological. I will show you our last work in central Greece in a fault. In a plain where the last earthquake of March have occurred by our team. This research shows that the faults of the southern Greece and northern Greece, they have different recurrence intervals and different slip rates. All this, the paleoseismological regards, they give the slip rate. I will give a little bit more emphasis on the archaeoseismology, and I will give you two examples, one from northern Greece, which possibly associated with a strong earthquake, the known in bibliography of Edirne, Adrianopoulos earthquake of 1752, possibly, and you can see the tumulus of the 1st, 2nd century during Roman period. You can see here the subsidence, and after the excavation, the ruptures of this earthquake, as well as the seismic faults and its profile. A second example, among many others in the Aegean, is the Troia, which is characteristic, the Homeric landscape. It was a bilateral project between the Onsekismart University of Çanakkale and Thessaloniki Aristotle University. Here you can see the Scamander basins, the Troia Fault, where also applied the same criteria for segmentation of this fault. Geophysical data by our colleagues from Çanakkale University, and public data, shallow boreholes, and we have some large trenches, and we have some preliminary results and dating results for this area in order to understand the Troia landscape in 3D. Another example of archaeoseismology comes from the famous Delphi oracle, northern part of the very active area of Corinthian Gulf, where you can see an important fault, and especially the smaller faults that affect the archaeological site. So among the greatest achievement was that we have understood the brittle processes of the uppermost crust and especially the seismogenic layer. And now we know that the majority of the surface earthquakes occur in a depth of 10 to 20 kilometers. We have modeled now the active faults and the recognition of the blind strike-slip faults. Here is an example from Northwest Peloponnesus, which recognized studying the surrounding faults, and it is important that it is a blind fault. And another area, which is simply, according to seismologists, the strike-slip fault of Cephalonia in Ionian Sea, in fact, is a very complex area, similar to that San Andreas, which is a compressional area with reverse faults, very complicated and thrust faults. New techniques have been applied in order to detect faults in plains, like in Thessaly plain. This is in progress, a new PhD thesis in our university. And another important issue is the growth of normal faults in the Aegean area. Normal faults, they 3D, which are commonly consist by numerous faults that they interact and make more complex the system. This is work in collaboration with the fault analysis group of the University College of Dublin, with my Delogos postgraduate students, and all this have been summarized in databases, systematically collection, quantification, homogenization, and integrated view. The prehistory is of Faust project, data from different sources, and we have the individual seismogenic sources in this example, which were well studied. Also from, they based on the INGV, Basili et al., composite seismogenic sources, and fault traces, fault scarps, etc. for this a very important North Greece Servia fault and its extension to the seismic fault. Here you can see the fault surfaces in 3 graphical radiuses combination. You know, there are many fault length, earthquake size, empirical relationships on the subject, and our with Riccardo Caputo, which needs to be improved. Another database in Greece exists of National Observatory of Athens and the new Seismotectonic Atlas, but now a new database of active faults and seismogenic, the seismotectonics of Greece is in progress by the Earthquake Planning and Protection Organization. Also, all this included in the European and worldwide databases concerning the ground deformation and especially the liquefaction phenomena. There is also by our group a database, and all concerning the database DALO for liquefaction phenomena, historical and from recent earthquakes, like that of Kos Bodrum as well, all in a database. Concerning the South Aegean, and a well-known area, here you can see from Sakellariou and Nomikou maps, and our tectonic map of Santorini, where faults and dikes are in close association. The stress inversion methods here applied, and we distinguished 2 different simultaneous extensions affected, associated with the fault segmentations of these strong earthquakes and volcanic ascendants, and all this summarized in the Aegean area as according to the fault time. The data have been used for the new zonation, not only in seismological data, including geomorphological and especially the active faults and recently geodetic data. And an example of application was in the Trans-Adriatic pipeline and in seismic hazard assessment. Now, concluding challenges. The new generation of earthquake scientists have to solve new problems, such as the geometry and growth of faults in 3D, water fluid in seismogenesis, an important issue, the accurate slip rate measured in geological times for the most of the active faults, fault rupture propagation, and especially the nearest segments, displacement gradient on the bed parallel slip surface, formation of relayed zones, a complicated simple distribution on the fault surfaces. An important issue is that fault earthquakes in constructions, we have learned what engineers need to design and what they expect for us. An open issue in my country, and I think worldwide, is the ban of building constructions along the active fault zones. So our understanding of the mechanism that drive extension in the Earth's lithosphere, and we have collectivity to be revised all the variety of these existing models of the Aegean. Now we need to summarize one model. Most of these questions center on how uppermost crustal deformation linked and related to meet the transition layer and especially the lower crust activity, as well as the lithosphere and mantle processes, because magma bodies, especially in South Aegean, they drive through the heat from upwelling and asthenospheric mantle beneath the Southern Aegean. And the last, and not least for me, is how inherited complex structures drive active crack deformation. In this picture, you can see how complex is the pre-alpine and alpine basement, and we will see in our next, in the last talk for the last earthquake in central Greece. Thank you. Grazie, ευχαριστώ. Teşekkürler. Your microphone.
Yes, teşekkürler, Spyros. Thanks very much for the great opening speech. So we have not received any questions for your speech. So I think everything was very clear, I guess. I can just only remind you that the participants can ask their questions through comment section on YouTube channel or by using the Q&A section at the bottom of their Zoom application. So we can leave.
So the next is Gian Maria Bocchini.
Yes, I think he's online now, and I just leave the floor to you, Spyros. Thanks very much for your speech.